Hi, as you may have heard, we have a new way of running Stata on campus, and it uses the so-called Jupyter Hub server. So what I want to do in this talk is I want to go through some of the details of that so you can see if you want to incorporate it in your classes or in your own research. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover these topics. So actually what you're viewing here is you're viewing a Jupyter Hub server document called a Jupyter Notebook. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about preliminaries. How do you log in, and how does the program work? I'm going to critique a typical student workflow that uses Word and Stata to build documents. I'm going to basically bounce off of that what this Jupyter Hub and Jupyter Notebook gives us. I'm going to talk about features and limitations, and then you'll see these features and limitations in action when we do a brief demo. Then I'm going to conclude by showing an example assignment document that I distribute via Blackboard assignments. Students upload it to Jupyter Hub, they complete it, and then they submit it as a Blackboard assignment. So that's the game plan. Okay, so when we're talking about preliminaries, I first want to talk about terminology. So when we use the word Jupyter Hub, that is the server that allows your web browser, which is what we're going to be using as a front end for running code, to build these Jupyter notebooks. So it's like kind of like the Stata GUI, except it's all occurring in a web browser. The Jupyter Notebook is the document that's the interactivity between code, content, results, all sorts of formatting, headings, and things like that we can do. And the keyword here is interactivity. So we can interface using Jupyter Notebook with Stata, R, MATLAB, Python, Julia, you name it. All right. So once students master using Jupyter Hub and building these Jupyter notebooks, the transition from one language, such as Python, to Stata, it is only a learning curve for the language syntax itself, not the user interface. Right. So to log into Jupyter Hub on campus, what you want to do is you want to go to the jupyterhub.wm.edu on your web browser. And you're going to log in. You're going to have to do the Duo 2-factor login. But once you do, you're going to have a bunch of options on the server for what you want to start up. So the default notebook only has Python. We have R. We have something with Julia, R, and Python. We have something with Tesseract, which I'm not sure what it is. We have MATLAB, Stata, and something called PyMC. Okay. So for our purposes, what I've already done is I've logged in. I have chosen the Stata option down here. And so what you're seeing here when we're running, quote, running this document, there's no Stata code yet. We're just building up introductory materials, annotations, written things about what this notebook is doing. Notice that I'm running this on jupyterhub.edu. Okay? All right, so that's kind of the preliminaries. Now let's talk about what a typical student workflow is when they're building assignments. All right, so this is kind of my take on it. So the student is going to get maybe a PDF or a Word document that's telling them what to do. That Word document may have some code in it, or it may not. So what does the student do? Well, they start to, in Stata, probably using do files, they start to write commands to address the assignment. Okay? Once they're happy with those commands, they're going to have some output, and they're going to start copying and pasting results, summary results, regression results, histograms, graphics, figures. They're going to start copying that out of the Stata window, the Stata GUI, and into their Word document. If you're like me and you like to see code, like what generated that output, I would also require students to copy code and paste it into Word. So whenever you do that, you know that Word likes to mess with formatting. So you're going to have to go back as a student and you're going to have to block in this code, set it to a fixed width font, maybe do the same thing to your results. And unfortunately, if you kind of revisit your work and you want to make some changes to your model, that can have far-reaching impacts into your Word document. You have to do this copy-paste formatting dance all over again. So there's a fundamental disconnect between your computing and your results and your write-up. And Jupyter Notebook on top of the Jupyter Hub server aims to essentially get around this problem. Okay? All right, so let's see here. All right, so let's talk about what we get with Jupyter Hubs and Jupyter Notebooks. Okay? So I've alluded to this before, and I'm going to show you how it works in a second, but it is an interactive document. So if a student submits a Jupyter Notebook as a problem set, I can then run it, and I can actually see, hey, does the code actually generate the results they're claiming? Furthermore, the results are included inside the document. So I have it all together, I can interact with their work, I can check their work, I can include additional comments or additional code that they can contemplate when I return the assignment back. Okay? A lot of people like do files, and do files can be used alongside Jupyter Notebooks, which I'll show you in a second. And a lot of times we like to include good commenting. So when we revisit, we know what's happening. Well, we can build very, very rich commenting, such as this thing you're looking at here with numbered lists. It's all formatted, bolded headers like features and limitations. So you can include very detailed comments in your Jupyter Notebook alongside your code. And I would argue maybe it's a better way to comment your code than do files itself. Okay. We have syntax highlighting, auto-completion for commands. I'm going to show you at the end one of my, quote, structured assignments that allows a grader to be able to essentially look at assignments side by side, and they're comparing apples to apples. So you can look for common mistakes, common errors. You can have a document on the side that you're pasting in sort of common deductions or common comments that you want to include. So it really has streamlined grading for me. Okay. So if you don't care about using this for teaching, it is a very valuable research tool. So you can email this Jupyter Notebook to your colleagues. They can open it up in a Jupyter Hub server and they can run it and interact with it as well. Right? What about limitations? So if you're a Stata GUI user and you use certain features like the menu system to uncover commands, we don't have that with Jupyter Hub. If you like to go in and hand edit data using the edit command, we don't have that here. Okay? When you save your work to the Jupyter Hub server, unfortunately right now it's unconnected to the H drive, so you're going to have to do some downloads and uploads if you want to have that kind of connection to your local file system, and that's a little clunky. Maybe IT can change that. I haven't really pursued that. We're going to see that these code cells, right now you haven't seen any code or any interactivity. We're going to come to that in a second. But once we start having code cells, those code cells can be run in any order, and a lot of times this can trip students up. And I'm going to show you some things that I use to get around that problem. And so we'll revisit that in a second. Number 4 on limitations is by far the biggest limitation right now, and this is a licensing decision made by the William & Mary IT and campus infrastructure. We only have 15 licenses available on jupyterhub.wm.edu. Since I have look over here on the right, this under my picture that you can't see, let's see if I can move it. Yeah. Since I'm using the Stata kernel, there are now only 14 available licenses for other people to use. Okay? Right now in cross-section, I have 20 students, and I believe 15 of them are going to use Stata over R. So if there's a problem set due, there's not going to be a lot of excess capacity for other classes or students to use it. So there may be some real clashes on license limitations and due dates. That's something that maybe my philosophy is, if they build it, people will come. Once people come, they're going to have to divert licenses to Jupyter Hub. All right. So if you are concerned about this whole thing taking licenses away, there's lots of other options. And in fact, I'm missing one here. We can use the PAC labs, the lab computers in the library. We can use the campus VDI virtual desktops. Or students can use their own machines, or we could use Cyclone, the cluster, which I don't have on here. Now, on those methods, the Jupyter Notebook, Jupyter Server are not available. So you're stuck using the Stata GUI and the Stata do file, copying and pasting into Word. Okay? If you want to, I have gotten IT in the past to help me using virtual desktops to set this up, but it's not easy. And it's not nearly as streamlined as using Jupyter Hub. Students can configure this on their own if they have a Stata license on their machine, but there are configuration steps. Okay? All right, so next what I want to do is I want to give you a brief demo, and I just want to talk about, I want to give you a flavor of what I mean by interactivity. Okay? So as I've shown you, I have chosen on the launcher that you're going to see, I've chosen, so when you log in, you're going to see something like this. Okay? You're going to have your folder system is going to be open, and chances are it's going to be empty. There's going to be nothing there. I've got a bunch of different folders. Maybe the only one you see is this one called Lost and Found. Okay? To create new folders, you do that. But to add a new blank Jupyter Notebook file, you want to hit your launcher. So I've got 2 of those now. And the launcher allows us to choose a notebook that uses Python. And since I chose the Stata option when I first logged into Jupyter Hub, the other option I have is Stata. So if we click on that and open up a file, you're getting a blank document. All right. And I've used, I'm built up from a blank document to basically build this thing we've been going through. And I'm going to kind of guide you through how you do that. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just run some Stata code so you can see how it works. So I'm going to insert a cell below. I could hit the B key, or I can use this little icon. And notice when I do that, I have a little blue thing with an empty bracket, and this says code, whereas the one up here says markdown. Okay? So if it says code, it's expecting Stata code. So if I put in sysuse auto and I run that, we've just run Stata code, and if we want to run some more Stata code, I'm going to insert another one. We can summarize the data. So notice that I have code cells, I have results, and I can do this stuff here. So let me run another thing just to keep it for n equals 1. Notice we've just deleted a bunch of observations. Also notice these numbered 1, 2, and 3. Those are the orders I've run the code cells. If I went back and I ran code cell 2, the summary code cell again, notice it becomes a 4, and 4 is occurring after a code cell that's later. Okay? Also, our sample size has been dropped a lot. Okay? So maybe we're going to have to be careful about this. So I'm going to just reset this. I'm going to clear this, reload the data. I'm going to re-summarize, and I'm going to get rid of this code cell because I don't need it. Okay? Now, if I think there's something really important here that I want to discuss, I can change this new cell that I've imported, that I've created, into a markdown cell. And so I'm not going to belabor this too far. So I'm using something called markdown syntax that's going to be rendered into better looking results. Let's see. Price, since that's a variable, maybe I want to change the formatting of that. Is, man, what am I doing here? Mean price is 6165. Okay. Let's see. Only 30% of cars are foreign. Okay. So these results sections, we can add headers here. So if I wanted to add a header, I can do this. Okay. Now, okay, so maybe I also want to, and this is something I don't really require students to do, but we have the technology here. If we wanted to include LaTeX math, we can do like something like this. Beta naught plus beta underscore 1. So we're going to estimate this model. So price is a function of, well, let's say it's headroom. Of course, this is completely bogus. Plus slash beta 2 times length for car I plus an error term. Okay. Okay, so we've got that. Let's see. So maybe I also want to include a link. I have no idea what a good site is for this. So I can include links. And hopefully this link isn't naughty. I'm just trying to demo this for you. So this is clickable for students. We can include photos of cars, all kinds of stuff like that. Okay. All right. So the other thing we can do here, now notice that I am mixing this stuff that I had pre-populated. Those are markdown cells. So if we double click on those, we can go in and edit those. But that's kind of my outline. I don't want to do that. So this is a code cell, so we can say look at the histogram of our dependent variable. And that's going to come out inside my notebook. And sometimes what we want to do is we want to have kind of a work area, and we could just to try code out. So what I like to do is open up a new console for the notebook. So notice that this is running on the same kernel. So this is not the same section. So if I do a describe just to look at all my variables, they're all my variables. If I wanted to look at my variables, let me make sure I'm not going out of here. Yeah. Okay. So if I wanted to look at my variables, I can do the head command, and notice I'm preceding that with a percentage because this is what's called a magic. If I wanted to look instead at the last 10 observations, I can use the tail command. Okay. I can resize this window. So this allows me to look at the data and do more exploratory stuff before I quote include it in my final document. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to use file, what was it? New console for notebook. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's suppose that we have, I'm going to close my console for now. Suppose that we have, we've done some work and we want to email it to someone. So the first thing we may want to do is rename the file. So just to make sure I'm hitting this folder on the far left side, I'm going to my notebook. I'm going to do a right click. I'm going to rename that. Something happened here. My mouse is on its last legs. I'll call this, oh wait a minute. That's not what I want to do. I'm actually, oh yeah, this is a good point. So what is it that I want to download? So I have two open documents. One's called Untitled and one's called Jupyter Demo. The Untitled one I'm not using, so I want to shut down the kernel on that one, and I want to close it. Okay. So kernel being active here just means that, hey, Stata is talking to your web page and it's ready to go. Okay. All right, so this is actually this Jupyter Hub demo is the one I want to download. And that's this one with this little green dot. That means it's got an active kernel. And so if I right click on that and click on download, notice that it has now downloaded into my local file system and it's ready to be attached as an email or Blackboard assignment. Okay. If instead I wanted to upload, I could go to my local file system, find a Jupyter notebook that I want to upload and click open and it'll upload that. Okay. I can copy and paste. If I wanted to paste this into this folder here, I could do that. I'm not going to, but I can copy and paste. So it's pretty easy to navigate around and organize your work. Okay. Examining and closing running documents. So I kind of already went over that. So I'm going to save this one and I'm going to close the kernel. And so that means if I come down here and I do something like sum mpg, so notice that when I go in my Jupyter Hub demo now, my Jupyter Hub demo, which is this file, there's no green dot here, so there's no kernel. So I'm going to show you this on the right hand side so you can see it. See how it says no kernel here? Well, how do I get a kernel? I could click here and select nbstata, but I wanted to show you what happens when you don't have a kernel. I tried to run that code cell, so now I'm going to click either Python or Stata. Well, this is a Stata document, so we're going to click Stata. And we run that, and I get a Stata error, no variables defined. Okay? Okay. Okay, how do I convert my notebook to a do file? Some people really like do files. Once I kind of got used to using notebooks, I just added all documentation in notebooks and used that as my do file. But you can export your work to a do file. So you want to go to File, Save and Export Notebook as Executable Script. Okay. So notice that I now have a do file in my local file system, and I'm not going to open that right now, but I think it has all of these details, like this stuff, commented out in your do file. Okay. Okay. Now, what else? How to insert written work. So sometimes on my problem sets, I have students that are doing a lot of Stata work, but also they're doing proofs, and some of them love to type it in LaTeX, but I don't require that. If they're typing it in LaTeX, that's totally doable. They just have to start, LaTeX equations and type a bunch of stuff in. Most students do it by hand. They take pictures and then they insert those photos into the notebook. Okay, here's how you do that. All right, so you want to kind of drag and drop. That's really the only way we can do this. So I'm going to open up my File Explorer. I'm going to go to some place where I know I have some things that are good for this. Let's see. What? No. Problem sets. 2023. Problem set 1. Okay. All right. So I have. That's not where I want to go. Apologies. I want to go to Do Files. Jupyter. Here we go. So I've got some handwritten work here, and I want to include it. And I'm going to maximize this. Notice it says attachment with some random strings in there. That's what you want to see. So if I run this markdown cell by clicking Shift Enter, now I've got handwritten work, and that's easy to grade like that. Everything's in order. I'm not having to jump across documents, open up PDFs or JPEGs or something like that. Okay. Last thing, I wanted to show you a problem set that I used, the very first one in cross-section, that's designed to get students using Jupyter Hub and Jupyter Notebook. And what I want to emphasize here is that when you get these things back, you are basically going to retain the same organization you hand out. So I like to include in my instructions, I give it a little HTML tag that basically gives it a color. And it has instructions and goals at the beginning. It helps them get started loading data sets. And then these things, notice, are empty code cells where they have to go in and run code. They're going to have to add code and run code. So if I have a student that let's say they're running some code, and remember this is a Stata code cell, and they don't exactly follow my instructions, and they run that, and then they may add I've seen stuff like this before. And they give me a message like that. Well, what I can do when I get the document back is I can basically insert a markdown cell or a code cell. All right, I'm going to insert a markdown cell, and I could change the tags to change the colors. I usually can have them kind of yellow, but I'm not going to demo that. And I could say it's something like this. Okay. And so they need to use this. Use auto. Stupid example, I know, but it just gives you an example. It gives you a sense of how things would work. All right. So let's see if I can randomly pick a color that makes sense here. So I use these tags in my responses. So it's easy for the student to see their work versus mine. So this is probably going to go horribly wrong. All right, that was not a valid one. There we go. Slightly different color. Okay. So the student can hone in on those colors to look for comments, and that's where I would deduct points, etc. All right. So I found this rapidly speeds up grading because the Word documents are always in different orders. The code is mixed and matched. It's in different. Students do it differently. Some students don't include the code. It's impossible for me to know how they generated results. Once I have this file on my machine, I can run it, I can change code, I can give comments, and it's a real time saver. I know this has been long, 30 minutes, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how things work. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me and I'll try and help. All right, bye.